Welcome to a new episode of the Advancing Consciousness series with Franco Di Nicola. This is a place where people can come to gain further insight and clarity as to what is going on and how we can shift things on a personal and global level, while also accessing higher levels of consciousness and awareness. We bring this series to you free of charge so that many are able to access this information. However, if you resonate with what Franco shares and you would like to support his work, contributions are welcomed and greatly appreciated. A link is in the description and will be provided in the chat if you feel guided to do so. Also, we have many previous workshops, such as a couple of our most recent, Maneuvering with Neutrality and Alignment during this next wave of unfoldments, and Deprogram Clearing Empowerment Workshop. You could also join us in our membership program, Let's Talk About You, where like-minded people come together bi-weekly to talk about the topics requiring deeper understanding and clarity. All of these are available on Teachable, and we encourage you to check them out as they are great resources at very affordable prices to assist in better understanding this human experience. The Teachable link will also be provided in the chat and description. And lastly, don't forget to share. As the more of us coming together and creating a shift in oneself, the more effective it'll be to shift things globally. Thank you for joining us and being part of the change. Enjoy today's broadcast.
So welcome everybody to another episode of Advancing Consciousness series. Today we have episode 70 and we're going to be playing with the relationship effect. So it's a spin-off of the butterfly effect, but in this case it's the relationship effect. And since it's so crucial on the way we experience life on a planet and taken on a form, and relationships actually extend way more than the relationship idea that we have in our own mind, which the collective likes to put a lot of focus on. But even that is only a minuscule amount of what really is taking place when it comes to relationships. So welcome again, and it was great to have you guys on the weekend. Some of you people that are online right now have joined us on the weekend. We had a 2-day workshop. It was pretty powerful. We did a lot going on with all the things that we did there. And I know by the time the Sunday evening came about, when we were about to wrap up, I think people were just done, close to fried. Yeah. And like Kimberly said, done. And so was I, because yesterday was kind of a, major crash day of sorts, if you want to call it that. But it was very powerful. If you missed out, in the description, and then Kimberly's also going to post it in the chat at this point in time, or comment section, the link to be able to get the video and audio recordings. They will be available on that particular link until Sunday. Then we will provide a different link. Kimberly's working on a secondary link for them. So the video and audio recordings will be the ones that you will receive immediately, or the unedited version, which are 2 full long day ones separated between the two. But there will be a cleaned up version, which will be trimmed and packaged under different topics. So whenever you're referring to it, you can go directly to the topic that you want to review over again. With any workshops, the more you repeat it, the more powerful they become within yourself, especially a lot of processes. We did a lot of processes, and each of these processes are there to assist you through your navigation of this colorful, existing, beautiful, intensified, dance of life, and we are at a point where it's very, very powerfully instrumental for us to be really on board with what's going on, rather than being in a position where we're kind of waiting things to happen. We're basically the drivers here, and we're more in the driver's seat than ever, not only in your own personal life, but also in the driver's seat of the collective life, and also all the other people that you interact with, and so forth. So anyways, today we're going to be playing with the relationship effect. And so, like I said, relationships is a big topic, and we're going to play with that. Let me see if I can do this. There we go. I'm trying some new options within the board, so there's a little bit of tweaking and getting used to it. I did get to use it on the weekend, so today I tried to do something a little different, and that seems to be okay. All right, so what do we mean by the relationship effect? Well, relationships has an impact. What is relationship in the first place? A relationship is an alignment or connection that you make with someone or some part of sentient connection. Relationship is not a give and take, but it is a sharing and receiving. What relationships do is in the sharing, you're actually providing an opportunity for your own personal experience, viewpoint, and so forth to be shared amongst whoever and whatever you're connected with. And there, we will break all that stuff down. So it goes there. But at the same time, it's also receiving. You're receiving a feedback. You're receiving a sharing also from other aspects of yourself. And it does not stop with just another individual. There's much more to that, and we'll cover that too. But so a relationship is a movement back and forth, and a grand opportunity for all involved to evolve, expand, grow, and access more essence of what we call source essence in a more elevated state, because we're always source essence. We cannot not be source essence, but utilizing more of that source essence. And as the communication back and forth, the sharing that goes back and forth enhances all of the playmates, and that there's more facets to that. But at the same time, it's advancing the whole collective. And we're talking about, not only the planetary collective, solar system collective, the galaxy collective, universal collective, but we're talking source itself. So as much as we are spirit, which is the facet of creator that is in action, or in this case, source in action, in creation, which we call spirit, and then source, which is basically source itself. When we look at that part of it, that's us as all existence. Nothing is outside of that. It's not possible, and that's the way it works. So let's take a look at this. So the relationship effect, as I described, it plays a big role. So relationships play a profound role in our lives, reality, and the world. So the way we maintain a relationship, and that is that level of open communication, does affect our lives in a big way. It affects us on how we shift, how we utilize or engage with whatever is there. It also helps us in how we experience within all the other components, which I'll break down shortly, of ourselves. The other part it does is also reality. It greatly influences, and it is one of the key factors that shape your reality. Not only your choices and interactions, but what you see, what you experience, who comes in and out of your life, what layer of the world you see, because there are multiple layers that we have created. Meaning, that you can see an organic 5D playground, you can see an organic 3D playground, you can see also inverted 3D, 2D, and 1D. And then there's layers of those in there. So depending on your state, your reality reflects that all around. Now, it goes even further because now we're looking at the world. How does it affect the world? Well, very powerfully, actually, because we are one of the key facets on how the world is expressed, experienced, and how it shapes for us. The world shapes around us. If you're talking the world, we're talking about Gaia. Gaia has a fuller spectrum, but it will represent according to how we want to see it. As much as there is already an organic matrix that creates a baseline, that baseline has flexibility within the layers of how you experience it. So for us to see major changes on the planet, it's really through us that happens. And I know we've talked about this before, but it has to be kind of reminded us because a lot of times we lose the grasp of how powerful we are, how involved we are within our world experience. A lot of people feel that the world is something that you're just participating in or just showing up in and having that experience of what the world offers. A part of that is true, but we are also directly involved in how it shapes to give us the feedback. So even when all this inverted stuff was put into place since 10,000 years ago, it only held in place because at that point in time we just kept choosing to use the reflection that was established at that time with our, cut back in our limitations and be able to experience life that way. So all we did is kept supporting with very minimal advancement an old world, that inverted world, let's call it that, because that's in true sense, that's what it was. So for us, the thing is, we have relationships that start with us. There are relationships, yes, with others. So let me bring that up so we can do that. And I'm going to put a layer on here so that I could actually write over it. Okay, so we have a relationship with ourselves. As odd as that sounds, we do have a relationship with ourselves. A lot of people don't realize that. Some of you have, of course. What does that entail? What is that relationship with yourself? Because many of us, and there's people that are, their souls have advanced to a certain level and whatever else, and they've created a division within their, their layers of consciousness and so forth. And their relationship is always focused to the external relationship with others, feeling that somehow you're not complete unless there's a relationship in your life or someone very effective or how could you call it? What's the word when somebody is very involved? Not so much dependent, but plays a major role with you. Anyways, I can't think of the correct word. What's that?
Invested? No.
Well, yeah, somebody that's involved, that, influential or something of that nature that comes into your life and feeling, okay, somebody has to come into my life for me, first of all, like people like to say, to complete me or in some way to feel good or whatever it is. And then we shape this whole idea that we need to have feedback from others to feel if we're adequate or that we reinforce our vision, which is kind of adopted idea of who we think we are. We have to be kind of reminded, massaged, and so forth. So a lot of people are dependent on that and have used that as a focus. But the true core relationship with ourselves is a relationship of our whole self. So we're looking at, we have a relationship with our body. That may sound odd, but it isn't. We have a relationship with our body. And what is the body? The body is a part of us, but it's also part of Gaia. And it has an innate consciousness. And it is a vessel, but at the same time, it's an extension of us. Okay? Now, if you do not have a good relationship, and when I say good, it's an open, flowing relationship, there's a feedback and so forth, then we create a separation. And many of us have been experiencing that for a long time. There's the body, then there's you. And the body is kind of, you want to fix it, do whatever, because it represents you in a sense. That's not a good communication, or that's not a good relationship. And when I say good, I mean a relationship that's holistic. Because a truly holistic relationship, it is a dialogue, a connection to your body. That means you are communicating and you're receiving feedback, and the body's communicating with you. With that level of communication, then you using cravings or whatever it is, or going into a certain place where you have a judgment of the body, that does not apply, because that is a breakdown. So the communication with your body is basically communicating, listening, and also sharing with the body. The body will communicate with you what it would like to shift or align so that it's more harmonious with the rest of you that is experiencing life. So in that way, it can give you cues on what little adjustments you need to do, say in intake or where your focus is and so forth. But it also will tell you very much so if the thought forms and programs and so forth are creating an imbalance in the body, creating emotional locked energies, locked patterns or blockages or anything of that nature. So that the body does not have to scream to you by using pain or malfunction to get your attention. Because when you have a good relationship with the body, you're not judging the body's not judging you, and it's just basically a beautiful communication back and forth, and that creates a beautiful harmony that does not require us to have those accentuated attentions or pain or whatever it is to kind of say, hey, wait a minute, you're ignoring me. It's like any form of relationship. If you're not communicating with somebody in a relationship, if you're not having an exchange back and forth, you will find that you become estranged. You will find that there will be a breakdown. You will find that the two parts feel like they're not adequate, they don't have a true relationship. They don't have a true dance together. And this happens also with our bodies. Because the body itself, especially with all the changes that have gone on, including with the extension of Gaia, it has a lot more wisdom. And that wisdom is related to how to experience yourself in a physical form. So the body is a sentient being, which is an extension of the sentient being of planet Earth or Gaia, whatever you want to call it. But you have to understand, all the bodies on the planet are interconnected through the main body at this point in time, as we call it, Gaia, but then also all the other sentient beings, which are all extension. That means all of the animal kingdom, the bird kingdom, the reptile kingdom, the insect world, the oceanic, and so forth. But it doesn't stop there. You have the plant life. All of that is interconnected. So there's a beautiful movement. Now, if we get caught up in playing a game a certain way where we're disconnecting from nature, then the body also loses the connection, even though it is connected, but it's not an open pathway. This is why times for us to connect with nature becomes nurturing, because that disconnect breaks down. But it doesn't stop there. We need to connect with ourselves. That means when you're in your body, which you're going to be, you're always connected with the body. You're always communicating. You have a relationship. And the relationship is loving. Because the body requires you, you require the body. And when I say require, meaning it is an agreement to work together. You didn't come into the body just to say, well, that's the only thing that I have, and I need to have that, and then disregard it completely, because most of us do. And the only thing we rely on the body in is to give us a sensorial experience. That's it. And it kind of relates us to, okay, we have a form. And that means, what we consume and so forth. It either gives you high or low, what we take in, whatever it is, or whatever we share with one another and so forth. And we use the body as just kind of a tool to kind of give us a sense. But really, our relationship is more what a lot of people call divine, where we're allowing a beautiful dance and communication between you and your body. So you're no longer separated. Because part of the separation that we've been experiencing on the planet, not only because we feel that we're all separate or been conditioned and adopted the idea that we're all separated, the separation doesn't stop by one another or nature or Gaia or anything of that nature. Separation has also gone into ourself. Because, if we can break it up, then there is no unification, there is no alignment that's going there. So you're never feeling embodied. So you could say, well, I want to feel embodied, but until you bring all the parts in alignment, you're not. You're going to be hopping around in different states of, say, a little bit more focus on here, focus there, and not having the full experience. Because the next part is our relationship with our human entity. Now, what's the human entity? That is the earthbound soul. The human entity has been here for 15,000 years, right from the initial start of the retooling. It has 15,000 period of incarnations. Now, that does not mean every single human entity has had active 15,000 years of incarnation. Some have been less because, as you can see, there weren't as many required human entity because there weren't as many expressions in form. So what it kept doing is replicating itself, but also gaining and pulling a lot of experience from other incarnation. So what does the human entity offer us? The human experience, the knowledge of being a human, a knowledge of going through evolution, a knowledge that has skill sets that it may carried over. Those skill sets are the skill sets that are continuing to evolve and advance for us to advance as a civilization. It has a lot of experiences in male and female. It does not isolate and say, well, okay, I am playing a male role or a female role at this point in time or any other role in between. But at the same time, it has those experiences. But those experiences, when you really look at it, it shares a perspective of all sides. It doesn't say, well, you're this, and localize the experience set from that. By keeping a broader open, it gives us the understanding, capacity to understand our expressions. Not only our so-called historical versions of ourselves or humans, but also male, female, and being in different cultures, different parts of the world, and so forth. It has all of that in its archive. So a lot of people, call it, what do they call the stuff that's in the archive? Akashic record. So the main human Akashic record is stored within the human entity itself for that individual. But then we have a more main Akashic records that actually has all the human experience at this point in time. And then, of course, the planet has other levels of Akashic records and so forth. So by being connected to our human part, which is really our gut, solar plex area is our transmitter receiver to that. By connecting with our human, you're basically allowing that relationship and that sharing so that you don't have to go through experiences that are not necessary because you have to learn again. You can tap into that information, and there's also a communication back and forth, because what the human entity shares as skill sets or whatever else, which is expressed through you, is also advancing, evolving, and so forth, and that is feeding it back. So it's communicating, but it also goes back to the collective human entity. So every part of step forward you make, you're actually stimulating and upgrading the collective human entity. Now, your human entity has a tremendous amount of resource too. It's a very innate consciousness and a lot of experientially enriched of the human experience. It's also very open to the point where it does not require it to say, I have to stay and drag my past, because it doesn't do that. It can take samplings of the past, of its stream of incarnation, but also tap into anyone or any human entity that exists on the planet and take whatever it requires, including what we call the over human entity, which is the collective human entity at this point in time. So we have a relationship there. So we discount. That's the part that lets us feel human, lets us understand the human experience, understand the human journey in the sense of feeling human, feeling what the human represents. Now, within there, it also carries a tremendous amount of skill sets in capabilities we're not even using yet. Because remember, the first 5,000 years, it had a record of time where we do not function in the way we function now, under survival, under restrictions, under the fact that we needed stuff to keep us going, under the fact that we were subject to the environment, subject to one another, and so forth. It has that history there. So that can be easily tapped into, and it is always available. And it's not effortful to do so, but what is when you establish that connection to the human, then you're tapping into that. So you establish a relationship with your human entity. It is the representation of the human experience over a 15,000 years of evolution, with the first 5,000 in its advanced organic 3D. And it's there, coming more online, bringing more of the organic 3D forward, okay, with the option to be able, and its upgrades. So that is the other part. So when we're talking about the fragmentation, we're looking at, of course, the body, the human entity. Then we have what we everybody refers to as the soul or higher self at this point in time. Now, the soul itself is another. So let's go into that. There's the soul. So the soul is another aspect of yourself. See, the soul is also carries a record of lives, experience, and carries multidimensional, expressional resources at this point in time. So the soul itself, like I said, is multidimensional, so it will incarnate in different dimensions, will take on different forms, will go on different planets, and can choose to be in non-form for periods of time and take on a role as a guide or take on a role as something else. And also just observe for a period of time and then choose to reincarnate. It can reincarnate on any of the planets. There are thousands of planets just in the galaxy alone. But that's just the start, because, you know, if we start talking about how many galaxies are in the universe and so forth, now you're really going out there. So that's the other part of the soul. So we want to create a connection. This is why we connect at the heart level, because we want to have a relationship with our higher self. Okay? So, because the higher self, or what we call the soul, really, because all of us are all higher self anyways, but the soul has a lot of experience that it can share. Now, are we going to use it all? No. We're going to use bits and pieces? Yes. And some of the pieces will come in line and some will not, because at some point in time, we're not in a state where the humanoid or the human state, or human expression, or human so forth with the body and everything else, based on the collective, may not be able to use that quite yet. So it still has that as the resource. So that's the other part. You create, maintain, and establish a good relationship. Now, sometimes we go out of whack because we say, okay, my higher self is the only thing I want to communicate with. And then we miss out all the other parts because you need all these other parts. Like I said, the body's the extension of Gaia. What better resources can we get in how to be in a human form? The human entity is the whole human lineage of experience and so forth, of billions of incarnations over a 15,000 year period, and then your soul, being the multidimensional, is bringing in a lot of that. So what is the part that's aligning all of this? Then we have the other part, the mind, which is also referred to as the mind, as the, what, how do you call it? I keep missing words here today.
Yeah.
Our consciousness. Yes. So basically it is our active consciousness. So we have we have subconscious, superconscious, and so forth. This is our active consciousness. This, when we say the mind, what is the mind? It's a collection of resources that is taking information from the body, the human entity, the soul, and creates an identity. But it's a very open identity. It sees itself as source. It sees itself as everything at this point in time. So that's the part that communicates and actually is the I or the me, okay? Because it is made up of all those parts. You were going to say something?
No, there's a question.
Go ahead.
Okay. Question. Was there a fixed number of human entities available 15,000 years ago? Did they then duplicate to accommodate the increase in population?
Yes, absolutely. They didn't start off with a fixed. You had the overall human entity that every body that there was an extension of each one. Okay, so it took all the resources from the core soul, or in this case the human entity, and then it would spin off and create another human entity that can be localized with a signature, meaning that it had a range and it was a reference point, and so as more bodies came in, more extended. The ones that, the earlier ones that came in, of course, have had more incarnations at that point in time. Now, some of them came out of service, and when I say out of service, meaning it chose not to reincarnate anymore and stayed within the main cluster soul, or in this case, cluster human entity. You were going to ask something?
Another quick question. Earlier, you'd mentioned 1D, so can you just share what is 1D?
Okay.
They hadn't heard that term before.
Yeah, I don't really use it. I don't go that low, but yeah. Usually when we're talking 1D, we're going into one-dimensional state. That means that a person is not open to anything. It's just a collection of emotions and programs. They've actually isolated themselves so much that they have no communication with the body, no communication with any part of themselves, even though it's there. And in some cases, they don't even have that active, actually. But they just basically kind of a robotic. And you probably see a lot of those around. Anyways, so they're either 1D or inverted 2D. So inverted 1D and inverted 2D. So it's one-dimensional. It only basically operates only on survival, sees nothing else, no other option. It uses everything it sees around it as a reference point and does not see beyond that. So if the reference point, and the reference point is not full open reference point. So when we're talking about that, it doesn't have different viewpoints. It's only locked into one viewpoint, and it uses that as the only means of expressing and experiencing itself. So it gets to that. So they actually end up being quite robotic. They are usually the extras, but the extras are also inverted 2D You're not going to have really inverted 3D in that. Okay, so you have the mind, which is your active consciousness. That's the part that's thinking. That's the part that, well, when I say thinking, it's the part that observes and takes all these resources and decides how it wants to handle things. But the overall consciousness, when it is not connected so well with the body, doesn't get as much feedback from the body, from the human entity, the soul. So it can feel that it's somewhat isolated, and then they go into the lower dimensional states of representation. The other one is the ego. Okay? The ego is a software. Okay? And the ego is a software that represents the inverted 3D, inverted 2D, and the 1D. That represented and was solely driven through that inverted matrix, which is no longer in play. We have a relationship with the ego. Absolutely. And the relationship, because the ego takes the role of somewhat of a bully of sort. And what do I mean by that? It's like easy to take tantrums. It always wants to be in the forefront or limelight, whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to lower this. I keep seeing peeking here. Not you, it's my camera. Oh. Okay, so if you have to adjust or compensate, then you can do that. So what ends up being the ego itself is kind of pushing itself to override all the other inputs. So your active consciousness can get all bound up by the information the ego keeps throwing out. What does the ego do? First of all, it likes to show everything backwards. The other part, it likes to create multiple versions of reality by kind of sharing. Where does it get its resources? Well, it used to get it from the inverted matrix. It doesn't do that anymore. Now it still has its own little background, but it takes it from the collective. The ego loves the media, loves anything that reflects the inverted world. It loves anything that it reflects what the collective is saying. That's the one that's going to say, you're not good enough, you're not capable enough, you don't look good, you don't do this and that, and it allows you to judge. So when you start judging your body, it's really your ego to create more disconnect, more disharmony with your body so that you're not even listening to the body, because now it's telling you what the body is like. It's telling you what it looks like, how it feels, whatever. It interprets everything. It does the same thing with the human, because it says, oh, the human works this way. It doesn't take the resources that your human entity is sharing from history of experience. It basically says, no, that's just a version. This is how it works. Look at the world. It's showing you this is how it works. A lot of education is based on that. Science is based on that. Philosophy is based on that. I'm not saying all, but a majority of it. The whole psychology is all based on that. Psychology is really main of this, that reinterprets and changes the whole viewpoint and understanding of the human experience, or what we call the human entity, and also the soul. Because it does that too. It overrides. So even if your higher self, soul, is giving you information, it will skew it. This is why when we have a difficult time to communicate with ourselves. Because say your body's communicating with you, or your human entity's communicating, or your soul's communicating with you, it's very subtle, it's quite clear, it's the first immediate response and so forth, and then the ego goes, no, that's not true, it can't be that, look, I have proof for you, look at this, look at this, look at this, and it likes to use a lot of the history stuff, it likes to use other people's examples, it likes to use what the media has been saying, or anything of that nature, and uses that as a resource. So what we did for the majority, for a period of time, is that we established a very strong relationship, a disharmony, a form of this, where that the ego now also dictated, not only you, created multiple facades of you, identities of you. This is who you are. In these people's eyes, you're this. In somebody else's eyes, you're this with somebody else's eyes. This is what you are in the world. And it's always changing things because it's always looking for feedback to distort. Now that's kind of the trippy part, the game we wanted to play. Go ahead, girl.
Just a question. Okay, so now that we're purging inverted matrix until 2023, does it mean people that are totally in it and are not choosing to move beyond it will exit the planet before that date?
The option's up to them, and I've talked about this before, but basically it's up to them. If they feel that some way it's not something that they can choose and they are not going to be able to take an active role of some sort, then they can leave the planet, absolutely. Others will create a reconfiguration, which means the body will still be there, could get a new human entity. Mainly it's a multidimensional soul that will come in and then reconstruct itself in a sense of restructuring what the active consciousness is able to function in, and then it can go into playing a different role at that point in time. A lot of them are overlays. So in essence, you see them only because we're still in that frequency that they're there, but eventually they may not even have to appear because they're kind of a projection that does not need to play. There's quite a few different things that can happen along the way. But yes, you will engage with less people and you'll come to the realization there's not as many playmates on the playground at the same time. So the purging process that we're going through right now is basically reestablishing a new relationship. So we're shifting away from the relationship that we have with the ego, which is very dominant, very power hungry. And when I say power hungry, it means it wants to control or direct you. Now, there's egos that are projected forward, or outward ego that makes it known. This is who I am, and is very dictative and very outlashes and outgoing. And then there are the ego that actually take the role of inverted ego, or the self-directed ego, which basically may not be expressing itself in the big picture, but it actually uses to lower your viewpoint, your access point, by always coming up with stories. Oh, you're not good enough. This life sucks. This is that, and whatever. So there's people that have mainly internal ego or internally directed ego, and then some that have mainly external directed ego, which usually a lot of people start to recognize, wow, they got a big ego, or they're very egotistic, or whatever it is. And then there's the ones that balance back and forth, and then you have one that kind of works both sides. So, is one better than the other? It depends on what you're choosing to play with. So our relationship with the ego is the part that we're saying, okay, you had your run, you had your fun, whatever it is. This relationship, this is a little dysfunctional. I'm not choosing to be playing this way anymore. So each time it tries to play, it's like a friend that keeps coming in, and you don't resonate with the friend. And then not only resonate, it's every time that you get to play with that friend, it kind of alters you and so forth. And it's like you're not being yourself. Because the ego wants, the last thing it wants to do for you is for you to be yourself. It will create versions of yourself which are superficial or projected, meaning this is you, this is you, this is you, this is you, and it can change it, entangle it, or whatever it is. So the point is, you want to get to that genuine you, so your relationship and the power given to the ego starts to shift. And that's been happening, but as more you recognize it, whenever it's telling you all these stories and it alters your emotions up and down, then you know what it's coming from. It's mainly the ego. Okay? So that's the other part of the relationship. So as you can see, you have a relationship of your overall relationship with your body, relationship with your human entity, your soul, your mind, your ego, and then it comes to others. So there's a relationship with others. That one people kind of know about, in a sense. Relationship with a partner, relationship with your children, siblings, family members, relationship with your friends, relationship with your co-workers, and so forth. And of course, we can get into community and so forth. But what's happening again? Like I was saying earlier, any of this stuff that's happening A true relationship is an open communication channel. So it's going both ways. Because when you're doing this, when this active consciousness is experiencing what the body is providing, this, which is kind of the whole experiencer, is not only receiving input from the body here, but it's also sharing input back to the body. So the body is advancing at the same time as you're advancing as this whole. Same thing with the human entity here. The human entity is also learning from your overall experience, and it's sharing what it's learning or accessing from others. So you can see there's a back and forth. Same thing with your soul. A lot of the souls that come, especially the ones that haven't been incarnating here, it relies on the body and the human entity to kind of show it the ropes, because it doesn't have as much experience in what we call the human form on the so-called human planet of Gaia. So especially when you're coming in the star seeds or ones that have only are incarnating for the first time on planet Earth, it really relies on the other resources. So when we're talking about that, we're going back to others. Relationships, like I was saying, with all the different parts, these relationships in its true form is open. You don't get into a partnership. You do not get into having children or siblings or family or co-workers or friendships or anything of that nature one direction. Yes, we can get easily convinced by the ego it's one direction, but the thing is, in its true form, communication is you're listening, you're open to observe. You see the whole picture. And at the same time, you're also open to be you. Because as the individuals are you, versions of you, there is an exchange that's going on, a connection going on that advances both parties. Now, I know we have staged certain situations where it tends to be a little bit more one way versus the other. There are going to be people that you're going to connect with that's basically learning from you too, but maybe playing a more active role for you because they only stepped in to kind of play a role because you've asked them to do so. Okay? But again, all relationship. So if you're with a partner, it's not about a compromisation. It's not about a 50-50 or anything of that nature. You establish a relationship where both are equal, both may choose to play various roles, but both are sharing with one another not only communication, experience, and energies, so that in fact, that both parties are kind of in a space that they can both evolve. So the whole idea of pushing buttons and things of that nature, that's a level of communication that's occurring in the relationship so that each party is having certain things exposed so that they can look at it and create a shift from it, basically purging it. So if somebody pushes your buttons and your buttons get activated, or you have a patterned response or reaction, emotional charge or anything of that nature, that individual is playing that role so that you can see what's active in you, which actually alters your state. Because when you get triggered, if you pay attention, I'm sure many of you have noticed, your state changes. Your vibration lowers, or you go into a complete pattern response. It can elicit a lot of emotional charges. It can go into where you actually going from, say, this much consciousness to this much consciousness for a period of time because it launched. Especially if it triggers something from the past, you're going from now, you're going back into the past, meaning you're regressing right back to the state of consciousness of that time. And that consciousness of that time would have been different anyways. And you're way more advanced. So the point is, we're choosing to go fully organic 3D and 5D, and eventually all go 5D. So guess what's going to happen? You want to let go of anything that brings you back to that inverted world. Because if you really look at it, the main driver of everything from now all the way back, and we're still experiencing to some degree, was all constructed when the inverted matrix was in, when we were playing in inverted 3D and 2D and 1D. In most cases, you're not listening to me at this point in time and coming from a 1D state. But you may have played, many of you have played as low as inverted 3D. So this time, all of those experiences, labels, definitions, and so forth were all created in that frequency. So the partners, the two people that come together, that relationship is to aid each other. Even when we're talking about twin souls, a lot of people get this crazy idea, which is great because it's just an idea. The crazy idea is that if I meet my twin soul, we're in bliss. Well, I can tell you, there's many, many twin souls, and you may be even on the call right now, or on watching this right now, or even later, and you may have been in a twin soul relationship. You may be even in it now. If there's still active programs, stories, and so forth that are still going to be able to lower, then you're coming to each other and you're still playing the roles. You're pushing each other's buttons, bringing up to the surface all of these old patterns and so forth, because when those things are cleared, you stay more pure in your higher state and allowed to go further, easier, without being regressed back all the time. Now, the advantage of a twin soul, which can be colorful, is that there's a powerful magnetic pull because both have the same signature. There's a powerful recognition. But then usually what they do is the first and foremost is to assist each other to purge as much as possible before there's a unification of creating something that's grander than the two combined, or the two separate. Let's put it that way. So that's the role it's going to play. So anyways, those are the relations. So a relationship with your children. You were going to say something before I go into that?
There's just
Go ahead.
anyways, saying if we did let go of relationships that are pulling us back into the older consciousness, we're going to be alone for a long time. Hard to find people who resonate at the higher state.
Well, the thing is, if you're in a relationship and it's pulling you down, then there's stuff active in you that's pulling you down. It's not the relationship. The relationship may play a role, okay? And the relationship may represent an old version of you, may represent something of an older inverted 3D kind of construct. If you get entangled in it where it actually changes you all the time, for example, they play a inverted 3D 2D role, for example, and you keep getting dragged into there because you're dropping there. You can't be dragged into there. It's you easily going in there because there's still all of that active. So in a relationship of that nature, you want to make sure that you utilize the relationship. You utilize that opportunity to bring to the surface everything until you get to the point of neutrality. What does neutrality actually mean? Meaning that no matter what role they play, it does not trigger you. At that point, you've completed what you needed to complete, which was your choice. And you can now say, does it still serve for me to be in this relationship or not? If not, then you let the relationship go its separate ways. Both parties are going to know that. It may not from an ego level if one of them is still very active to that. So you let it go. Now, regarding are we going to connect with other people or whatever it is, when you're being your true self and you don't have any of that other stuff, a lot of openings occur. Okay, so your complementary at whatever stage you're on will show up. But as long as you're still working on some of the other stuff, you're going to recreate something else, or you're going to feel that, okay, I'm not going to have anybody. The point is not running away from your current relationship or current arrangements, is to use it because it is a tool. It is an advancement tool. Use it to clear everything up as much as possible, if not all. And then from that point, you're now trying to escape the relationship. You now feel that this relationship no longer serves and we're on a different path. But one thing you're going to notice, when you get clearer and clearer, I'm just using this as one side. When you're getting clearer and clearer, your vibration gets higher and higher. The higher you get, and if the other individual's not raising in it and they cannot pull you down any longer, what's going to happen? You're going to see and feel the difference. So you're not even on the same page anymore. You're not going to even see a level of communication. At that point in time, you're neutral, but then you say, okay, we're not on the same path anymore, or the service of whatever was required is no longer. So the thing is, the idea, which is an idea, if we don't stick around with somebody, then we're going to be alone, is an idea, ego generated, collective generated, inverted matrix, inverted 3D. This is why we end up attaching ourselves to people and then find it difficult to part. But the thing is, if you're together with somebody, utilize it. Now, that's in a partnership. When you're talking about a relationship with your kids, see, the thing is, we have this misconstrued idea from the inverted way of life, is that a child comes into your life. Of course, it makes you feel good because now you're giving life, and now you can be the teacher, and now you have a responsibility, and now you've just given a kid a meaning of your life because, hey, my life means more for me because now I have to care for somebody or something like that, and I can live through them because as they do things, I can feel good about myself or yourself in this case. And that's all that inverted stuff. It's not real the way it works. The real relationship of a child with coming into your life, or children coming into your life, those are other full, complete individuals coming into your life. Yes, they're going to have to learn how to manage their physicality to a certain degree, but the thing is, that's a small part in the very early stages, because after that, you have to always see the child, even at birth, that it is another representative of you. You have to understand the souls, the human entities, and the bodies are massively advanced. At times they're more advanced than the mother, by far, and sometimes not. That's okay. So the thing is to set up an open relationship. You're listening to the kids, you're communicating with the kids, you're not telling them how to live, you're not, getting involved with them and saying, well, I know better. Because parents do that a lot, and then they feel a sense of responsibility and so forth. What you're doing is creating that form of separation and superiority, thinking that, okay, I got to be the teacher of our kids. So many people have talked about this many, many years now, is that the child is your student and your teacher at the same time. Because you're learning from the child. The child is actually reminding you on things that we've put aside because of our experience. And they're also bringing a lot of wisdom. You have to understand, a lot of their human entities will bring in pretty powerful and profound skill sets that will aid you in playing a particular role in your life. And also, they're multidimensional souls. Sometimes some of our parents, and there's more of them, parents are receiving kids that are, beings from other planets, and this meaning star seeds. So they're coming in with souls that are, have a completely different viewpoint and so forth. So the thing is, the last thing you want to do is isolate it and say, okay, I'm the one that tells you how to live your life. You can show them a little bit of the ropes, but you have to keep it open so that they can express themselves. The point is, you need to be you, and you let your children be themselves. Same thing with siblings, same thing with the family. You let the family be. But the relationship, you have to understand, any and all relationships exist because don't think that you got settled with a kid coming into your life as, okay, because I wanted one, and the kid, happens to be my property or whatever it is. It doesn't work that way. There's an alignment and agreement so that when they come into each other's lives, even though it's from a super conscious level, and you may not be obviously conscious of that agreement, they're coming in to provide you something, to assist you with something, to open your eyes in something. And you're doing the same thing to them in one other way, in some other way. So there is a mutual benefit and agreement for any child to come in, any sibling to come in. Now, some siblings you may not have that much interaction with, and that's okay, because a lot of times it may not require that, because even though you're coming from the same life stream, it would be more of a less direct communication back and forth, but that will vary in different stages of their lives anyways, so you have to be open. So like I was saying, with anyone and everyone, when we're talking about people, you see people for what they are, not the facades and whatever else, allowing them to be themselves as you are being yourself, and have a open communication. That's a pure relationship. When you do that, all parties involved evolve much more efficiently and clearly. It does not have impedance. It does not have restriction. Because the moment you see yourself superior, which your ego likes to say, more than the other, or you got to be the teacher and so forth, they're not learning. Like you take teachers, for example. A teacher, if they're going in with the mindset, I'm the teacher, they're the students, they don't know better, I know better because I studied in college and I studied in university, I went to school and I'm the teacher, I got the labels and I got the pieces of paper that says I'm a teacher, then you're going to go try to teach. But are you actually learning from the kids? What do you mean by learning from the kids? Getting feedback, seeing how you can hone your craft, how you can appreciate and understand where they're at. So there's another level of communication that is established. Now there's a true relationship, an open relationship, not a relationship that is only one-sided, which is kind of what the way it is. So now you have the student that is not eye to eye with the teacher and may not be preferring to deal with the teacher. And you have a teacher that is not eye to eye with the student, and the student you're not feeling that connection with the student. So there's a stifling of growth, a stifling of evolution. Because true teachers is a teacher and student always. A teacher that is open, communicates, gets feedback, is always catering and not catering, but crafting their skill sets and their communication so that they're learning from the kids, but they're able to even teach the kids much more openly and have an appreciation of what the kid has to offer, the appreciation of their viewpoint, but also an appreciation that there's an equal. And it creates a different environment. See, the thing is, true teaching has always been an open platform that you are. So, in fact, not only teaching them whatever you're supposed to be teaching them, you keep it open so that when you get the feedback, you can adjust it. So not only they will understand it, but you can actually craft it so that it is it is not rigid. And the thing is, most education is rigid. This is what you teach, and if, ands, or buts about it. But when you're open, then you're getting feedback, and you're now looking at other alternative way of seeing it. Because the thing is, for education to evolve, for the teachers to evolve, you need to get that open, maintain that open relationship where you're learning from the kids. Because a lot of the kids, because they're younger, there are souls that have come more early in this playground that are bringing more of their awareness and more of their skill sets that are active before it got totally squashed. And then a lot of times these souls are coming from a little bit more advanced, or at least more experienced dimensions. And so the thing is, the last thing you want to do is say, well, forget about whatever you are or what you have to share. You gotta get on the page here, because this is the curriculum we have to teach you. You can still create a curriculum, but having a feedback and an opening for that. So that's a relationship with kids, relationship with your own family, relationships with partners, relationship with anybody in the family. And the same thing with work environment or any other environment. You have a relationship where it's open. You're learning from other skill sets. You're learning from their experience. And you're being fully open and transparent in the sense of sharing and not being in a position to... And of course, you're going to have the external, say certain things, but if it gets triggered, you want to definitely do some of the stuff that I've been teaching for a long time or sharing that's triggering your own memories. Write it down and work through that to see, okay, what's my story behind that so I can address it. So that's the relationship with others. Then there's a relationship with the community. And what is that? There's a relationship with the community. There's an energetic exchange. There is a sharing of knowledge of a collective in whatever community. Communities can be your immediate environment, meaning your neighborhood, but then it extends to the city that you're in or country that you're in, or in this case province or state or whatever, and then expanding in these communities. And then we have lots of communities. We have communities even in the religious world and so forth. Those are different individualized part. So the same thing. Now let's go take a look at religion for a moment, just as a moment. When we're looking at religion, a true relationship is not a one-sided relationship of dictatorship, meaning that if the religion is dictating this is how it is, and you're not open to freely connect and bring that higher consciousness, then that relationship, is not going to be so conducive. So you may bring up certain points in yourself in the sense of if it triggers you or anything of that nature, but eventually what you're looking at, you want to be in a relationship that is always open. So if there's a relationship like a religion, a relationship like we were saying earlier with a partner where there is not that open flow, then you can choose to terminate that relationship. You can say, okay, that relationship is not open, there's no growth here, and I'm not really feeling drawn to be locked up in that part. But you're neutral when you're doing it, it just doesn't serve you. Because the thing is, we are evolving. Every part of us, consciousness is evolving. Spirit, which is us in creation, is evolving. You can never create a stagnation of any sort. So anything that you're in that is stagnant, get the best you can out of it, and then terminate it if it's not moving. You say, okay, it no longer resonates, and no longer supportive. It's no longer part of my experience, and you can shift away from it. This is the true nature of ourselves, that we don't get hung up in holding on to old constructs or anything of that nature. Because this is the thing, it actually slows down the progress within ourselves very, very powerfully. So that this is kind of the game we played, because the whole idea with the inverted matrix was never to utilize these resources that we have, our capacity. And it always was backwards. Everything that was really what was happening, everything that was a higher nature of consciousness evolving, was made to seem wrong, taboo, or crazy, or anything of that nature. And everything that was not true and not our true nature was now perpetuated as that's the way it is. This is the real thing. We have our hierarchy, we have authorities, we have deities, we have this, we have that. And the functionality is, okay, you're no longer whole, you're fragmented, you need this, you need that. There's so many of that inverted stuff is what we're purging out of, but that's how it was projected before. So that's your community, and then the world. Our relationship with the world. Relationship, how do we relate with the world? How do we look at the world? Are we learning from it and advancing from it and then sharing with the world by just your expression? Even if it's not reaching the whole world, it is. Even if you're not saying, well, I'm public and I'm known all over the world. You don't need that part. You'll be as public as you need to be if it serves. If not, don't worry about it. But the fact that you're experiencing and looking at the world and you're not saying, well, this is the world it is, and I'm going to see how can I adopt to this, or how can I adapt, or how can I get, set my world and my reality and make it more realistic, because that's all I have to work with. The world doesn't work that way. The world is saying, give me feedback, and at the same time, I'm going to show you what we've created so far as a collective, but at the same time, the world and the organic nature, matrix, all wants to evolve. We're all wanting to evolve. We're all wanting to advance and using higher states of consciousness, creating much more fluidity, less rigidity, less, slow movement of sorts, getting rid of all of that stuff. So our relationship with the world, how much is the world governing you? Because look, you get a relationship with a partner, and you can choose that the partner is the one that dictates your life, dictates everything that you do together, possibly. And that was pretty prevalent for the longest time, being male superseding female, which is, again, another constructed of the inverted matrix. But anyways, in that sequence of whatever was playing out at that point in time, you have the relationship, and you take a back step back in the role and allowing that one other individual to dictate. So what happens? Now you're trying to mold yourself based on this other individual rather being yourself. It's the same thing with the world. You could say, well, okay, this is the world, and I can adopt that and shape my world around it and create the confines, because the world is also what we call the world is the collective way of seeing it, which we've been all conditioned to do, has certain levels of boundaries. This is all you can do. You could see it in a lot of our technologies. You know, we're advanced in some ways, but we're also using it in different ways that are less than conducive to advanced humanity of sort. You're looking at some of the old technologies that we're using, old ideas of government, religion, education, medical, and so forth, which is all inverted, which is still showing. You can't look at that and say, well, this is the way it is. Yeah, you can, and we have been doing it for the longest time, but we're no longer seeing it that way. So your relationship is an exchange. I see what's there. I see how I can change it. This is where the envisioning, the imagination, creativity of projecting that world, because once you understand how powerful you are, we all are, individually and collectively, on changing the movie and the video game we call Earth, which is basically a very elaborate video game, but we are the ones that are reprogramming it based on the advanced version of ourselves. So that's that. Having a relationship with ourselves, body, human, and so forth. Let me just take this out of the way. All right. Let's see what other surprises we got. What's that? See, now it's all clear. You happy now?
No, yeah.
Okay, so, oops, I better throw in another one because I need to, have scribbling space. Relationships are extensive. As I was pointing out, it's extensive. It's not just localized, because a lot of us are thinking, okay, a relationship with a partner. That's it. Most people, that's all they think. They don't even see the relationship with their kids. They don't see a relationship with family. Yes, you may say, okay, well, they're my family. I have a relationship with them. But they don't always see a relationship with their kids. Some people do, and more people are. But relationship with others, relationship, even though that they're not a significant other, for example, or that they're not in your immediate family, they're all part of. So this is why our network of relationship is extensive. It's already a further starting initial extensiveness within ourselves, because a lot of us have disregarded and say, okay, I'm just my thoughts, I'm just my stories, I'm just my whatever facadal is a new word, a facadal aspect of myself, thinking this is who I am. Okay, that's a good one. You have to write that one, facadal. Okay, so relationship is quite extensive, and can seem complicated. It can. But why does it seem complicated? Because we're still looking at it from an old viewpoint that we've been adopted and conditioned. Because a true relationship is fluid, it's open, it's not complicated. But they are not when seen in its pure form. Because in its pure form, it's not complicated. In its pure form, it's play. In pure form, it's an appreciation for everybody coming together, whoever you're coming together. You have an appreciation for the world, you have the appreciation for the collective, you have appreciation for all the systems out there, you have an appreciation for your immediate partner, your kids, your siblings, your family, your work, your friends, everybody, community, and so forth. But it's open. You're learning, shifting, and projecting. And when I say projecting, you're not projecting in the ways people talk about, I'm projecting this version, but you're just the fact that you're experiencing and keeping that communication open, you're basically what's happening. You're transmitting into the collective how to form the collective, because the collective is always, or in this case, the collective world is the screen, the video game, that we're seeing and experiencing in the movie or whatever you want to call it is always waiting for our feedback to upgrade. It's not stagnant. It may have looked that way for the longest time, but it isn't. So as much as it may seem complicated, it's not when you see it in its pure form. It's pure nature. What is this? Relationship is about growth. Relationship is playing with each other. Why do you think we have many versions of ourselves on one playground? Why don't we just show up ourselves and just connect with nature? I know some of you guys may say, oh, I would prefer that. But the thing is, if you want to do that, you can choose to do so and do that where you don't have to depend, or not depend, but interact with others. But the thing is, you knew coming here, I'm going to have a lot of different relationships. And these relationships are going to advance. All of it. It's going to advance the bodies, the human entities, the souls, the overall consciousness, the matrix, the organic matrix specifically, all systems, and way of life. It's just communication back and forth. Okay? Is there anything else that I needed to cover that I did not cover around that? Okay. So, I basically said that. I'm just establishing an open flow relationship. I covered it. Basically, it's open. You share, you receive. You share, you receive. You don't get to a point where you say, well, I'm not receiving anymore. You're going to get to a point where you see what you're receiving is no longer playing a role for you. And at that point, the flow will still remain there, but you may say, okay, now it's time to shift my connection to another playmate or another aspect of it. Go ahead.
Karen's asking, what about our relationships with pets and wildlife? Are these as significant? I'm deeply connected to animals on a soul level.
Yes, absolutely. I didn't put down the animal, but all sentient beings. So you do have the relationship like with Gaia. You have the relationship with the plant life, nature as referred to. You have a relationship with the animal kingdom, the bird kingdom, the oceanic kingdom, the insect kingdom, and also the reptile kingdom, and so forth. So we will be gravitating to one. But the thing is, you want to pay attention to why you prefer one over the other, because you may limit yourself by saying, well, I'm better communicating with animals. You can say, okay, yeah, I have a preference to, but you want to keep open to the rest of it too, so that you're not missing out with other inputs. So you're not connecting with one, you're connecting on every level, because all the levels I've showed are all to be left open. So there's a flow with all of those areas, all of those connections. It's not just localized as one. So yes, you can, because the animal kingdom has a very good reflective response, and as they observe from you, a lot of times what happens with animals, especially if they get closely connected with you, they actually piggyback to your soul. So your soul is being expressed through them too, which is your multidimensional soul, with the animal that's with you at that point in time. And so there's I don't want to call it tethering, but there's a connection that's established, so that whatever they're experiencing is kind of reflecting you. And then most of the times the animals are there in your life because they have something that they can share and that you can share for them. So it's still a two-way communication when it comes to the animal kingdom also. Okay? So establishing open flow with all the aspects of ourselves and reality will enhance your journey and the transformation we're going through. So this is why it's really, really, really important for us in a very powerful way to establish a real, clean, flowing relationship with everyone and everything. And then, of course, you're going to alter in the sense of what the relationships may represent at different times when that service to each other is done. Now, if it's one that's totally finished, the other one is not, then it's a choice of the one that's finished to move on, or vice versa, whatever. So the thing is, you have to keep that relationship open. For you to grow as a human, the relationship with your body, your human entity, your soul, your overall consciousness, and whatever relationship with the ego is going to help you advance. But it doesn't stop there. You're advancing with other relationships around you. Partner, if there is one, children, if there is one, siblings, if there is one, family, if there is one, work, if there is one. I mean, we're going to establish a movement of relationships. There are people that do not adhere to any particular relationship and just flow. So people will come and go very freely, never binding, and so forth. If you have this idea, a lot of times we do because the ego loves this, it's like you need to find a partner, there's a dependency for somebody to be there, or you're going to be alone, whatever. That's a program that the ego is doing. If you can get that point, what it means and everything else, and you clear that part, you purge all that part, then a relationship will be fluid for people to come and go into your life. And sometimes you'll meet people, and you'll meet people, and there will be a longer term connection. But it's not because you need one, not because there's a dependency on one, or the fact that that's your completion point. It's more as a complement and a complementary to grow. Because, well, look at it this way. A relationship would be, in the beginning of any relationship, I'm not saying all, but in the majority is, right now we're going through a major transition. We need to purge all the old stuff. So they may play very powerful roles with each other to push each other's buttons to bring up all the old stories, programs, belief systems, labels, and so forth, so we can clear it out. Eventually, once that's all done, and that no longer, now it's more of a partnership where they're enhancing each other and what people call working together, or whatever it is, to enhance each other. Even if they're going out and doing different things, but that connection and that coming together assists each other to advance. And that's the thing. It's not always about pushing buttons or anything of that nature. It's about coming into each other's lives. When you allow people to be themselves and you're yourself, they're both enhancing in a very powerful way. Okay? And so it enhances the journey. So your journey will enhance. Things will speed up. More changes will occur. You discover more of yourself. You're getting more and more online with the true essence of who you are. There's so much more movement, especially with the transformation we're going through, because right now, we're going through a transformation. You want to speed it up? Well, this is the thing, is when you're open flow with any form of relationship, you're always online in the sense of communication back and forth, and you're making adjustments and advancing constantly. All right? Is there anything else, sweetheart? No. Okay. Let's see. Our true essence functions within relationships and can experience the true form of creation. So what does that mean? Let me see here. Our true essence functions within relationships and can experience the true form of creation. We created this playground and we created ourselves to have relationships with multiple versions of ourselves, represented as sentient beings and other so-called human beings per se. Even though a human being is the overall consciousness that's been labeled as human being, it's many multiple aspects of it that's coming together to create what looks like one unit. So when we're looking at creation, okay, if you go right back to the start, you're saying, okay, there's source. Source existed. Source was a consciousness. Source is full spectrum. Source had very limited capacities to advance because it wanted to experience what it had as a resource and see from that resource how further it can expand or what else it can achieve. So what did it do? It created a relationship right from the get-go. Source created spirit, which is source. And that spirit, which we all are, is source in creation. And what did it do? It went out and created playgrounds, created versions of themselves, And it didn't start off with as many as we have now. That's been an evolutionary process. Every time it reaches a certain part, let's fragment some more. Let's create more variety, more variety, more variety, more playgrounds, more representation of human forms, or forms, I shouldn't say human forms or whatever it is. To do what? To experience itself. To go and do things that it's never done. This is what creators do. Like anybody in their creative mode likes to create something new. Create new adventures, may create new technology, may create new ways of seeing life. This is the thing. Our natural state is spirit of creation, and this is why we create. This is why we interact. And through relationships, we're experiencing our sourceness while creating aspects of our sourceness in play, and what we call representations of ourselves. So spirit is Gaia. Gaia is part of spirit. It's a sentient being. The inner earth is part of the sentient being. All the plant life, everything that's on the planet, sentient being. They're all spirits, all of them. And we are the same thing. We just put a collection of it. Because if you really look at it, you cannot experience, you cannot grow, you cannot do what you're able to do now without a planet. You take that out of the equation, then of course you don't have a playground. If you take out all the sentient beings on the planet, then you can't experience it the same way. And if you don't have other aspects of yourself, other people, for example, then you can't play with each other. And this is why each one has a different signature, because each one is going to represent differently so that they can learn and grow. As each one is growing, it's advancing source. It's advancing the spirit of source and creation. So this is the thing. So your true essence of functions within the relationship, and it can experience this true form of creation, because we experience ourselves as the creator. Most are involved in a disconnected and somewhat dysfunctional type of relationship in some areas of their life, which does impair our natural potentiality. If you create an attachment to a relationship, a representation what that relationship is, and you do not allow it to be in its natural state, your potentiality, your advancement, what you can learn and what you can share reduces. Your capacities reduce. Under the inverted world, it was the fact that you give yourself away to others. You're in a family, and the construct is designed so that if you want to be accepted in the family, you got to be one of them. The moment you adopt that idea, you are now aligning with that. And that's fine, you can have that a temporary experience. But are you going to grow? Or are you going to be just part of that minuscule growth because everybody's keeping themselves in check within that family? See, this is what we got to keep in mind. All right? So the thing is, we have this disconnected version, or this distorted version idea of what a relationship is. You get into a partnership and it's about 50-50, give or take, and this and that, where you can't be yourselves, you have to compromise, you have to, you can see what somebody prefers and you may want to play with them in that respect, but you're always keeping your genuine self and you're still being yourself in the relationship in the way you want to choose. Okay? And if we create a restrictive relationship, you want to observe that and see what comes up for you so you can clear all that stuff up and then go into the expanded. Normally it starts to shift anyways by the moment you get out of it. So if we're looking at it, the idea we have of relationship is what we've been living for a long time. What it looks like as a partnership, what it looks like with a family, what it looks like with friends, what it looks like with work, what it looks like in relationships and so forth. And it's not open. Most of it is not open. It's not fluid. It's one dictating over the other, is a restriction, and so forth. Now, as much as that may have served for a long period of time to have that experience of restriction, limitation, polarization, and all of that stuff, and separation, but that's not where we're going. So we're basically dissolving this whole idea like I was talking to you about teachers, whatever it is, of one. For example, even in the medical field, they don't take feedback per se and make adjustments. They're just basically whoever comes up with whatever idea, and that's what they're saying. You're labeled this or that or whatever it is. There's not that open communication. So there's always this so-called distorted, and we can label it as that, so just to use it as a reference point, of what relationships always meant. But the thing is, right now, is that distortion, all of that stuff is dissolving. So it's open, you're yourself, you're fluid, you're teaching, you're learning. And the thing is, when I say teaching and learning, it's just a reference point of words. It's about really sharing and receiving, sharing, receiving somebody else's sharing and so forth, and utilize only bits and pieces that belong, that aligns with you and so forth. And there's a growth for everybody involved. Nobody's dictating over the other. So if somebody is sharing information, it's sharing information, but that information for you to be utilized to the degree it matches with you, and then you adjust your life accordingly because of the fact that you are choosing to have a deeper understanding and go in a different direction. So if we're still putting a lot of power in the old version of relationships, then we're definitely impairing our natural potentiality. How can you create something new if you're still attached to the old? And when you're having dependency, when you're in fear, for example, of losing someone or something of that nature. What better way to be in a relationship and be 100% yourself, let them be yourself, and let not an agreement because you have an idea that there's a contract of some sort, say marriage, or a contract because they're your children, or because they're in the family dynamics or anything of that nature. You do not say, okay, this is how it is, and I gotta do this. The best way to be is yourself, because in that, then everybody has the opportunity to grow, and no one's restricted. Now, if somebody wants to be restricted in a family dynamics or friendship or whatever, let them be. At some point, you're not going to resonate, and you may choose to go play with other friends or get into another relationship, or whatever it is. Let the children be the children, you be yourself, you share what you share. But again, at the same time, when you're having that level of communication, you're sharing your perception of what you see now and get their feedback, because they may have a different perception. They may have even a clearer viewpoint. So this is the thing. Okay, is there anything else you wanted to say? No. Okay, all right. Many delayed changes in one's life are due to an inverted understanding of what relationships are. Small shifts can produce significant changes. So the changes that you make, the way you communicate with yourself, how you communicate with others, how you stay open, receptive, fluid, will make large impacts not only in your immediate reality, but all the levels of extended realities. So you don't have to be concerned that your whole life has to change instantaneously. Make those adjustments. Each adjustment creates a greater opportunity of expansion and opening. And if you have fears of making those adjustments, work on the fears. Go write it down. What's your fear? What are you afraid of? Oh, I'm afraid I'm going to lose these people. I'm going to lose this, or I'm not going to have another opportunity. Those are ego programs from that inverted world that was being projected. And the collective is still projecting a lot of that. Oh, you're losing a good person, or you're doing this or doing that. Well, the point is, first of all, you don't want to run away from it. But the second thing is, whenever there's no longer alignment and you're in neutrality, then you're going to move through it. You're not going to give power to that old construct. So when we get all caught up in the game, it delays, it slows things down, because we haven't got to a point where, it gets to that saturation point and finally say, okay, I'm done with this, I'm done with it. But the saturation point is not frustration. Saturation point is not ready to explode. That still has an emotional charge, and that's not really accessing that higher aspect. Go ahead.
Question. What about open relationships where someone has multiple partners? How will that match the new earth?
Well, the idea of having multiple partners in the new world, that is fine. But the thing is, people have the freedom where they would want to make somebody, a primary partner, and be okay with that. Others may not. They want to have multiple partners. However, the thing with that, in the new world, you're not having partners because you want to have different ways of communicating or some illusionary idea that one partner represents one and another partner represents something else. Because in your true state, the partners are just fluid. You're just going to have people come and go, whatever it is, and everybody just is in their lives because they are drawn to each other's lives. Okay? It's not so, because right now multiple partners and so forth a lot of times are going, well, I don't feel good if I'm not with many different people, or they have a lot of other stories and ideas around that. So in the so-called fifth dimensional consciousness, first of all, there is no ownership or control that we owe somebody or anything of that nature. You allow a natural pull in each other's lives, and you will play the roles and so forth. So if somebody feels that, I want to play roles with different people, they're going to do it. But it's going to be a very clear, open way where it's not, I need to have these variants for me to feel good, or the fact that, I need to explore all these areas. Because a lot of times when you have a connection where there's an equal flow, you don't need as many variants in the sense of saying, I have to have all these, so-called intimate partners or whatever it is. But like I said, there's not going to be any ownership, so that in fact you can have, move from one partner to another very easily, not without the control structures have in place. But the thing is, as much as that is there, that doesn't mean that that's how it's all going to be across the board. It's up to each individual. Somebody going into fifth dimensional consciousness really has somebody that they feel a really strong connection, soul to soul, and they're not interested in another. Doesn't mean they don't communicate with them. They don't have them as friendship or anything of that nature, but they may just be, say, sharing the intimacy part with one individual, for example. But that's a heart-to-heart thing. That is their true essence with their true the other person's true essence, that's choosing to do that. And if that doesn't need to play out anymore, then others will come about. And, a lot of the people may not have a requirement for any of that at that point. So they're just kind of open to connect with anybody, but not go into the intimacy part to the degree where it's received as now, because most of the intimacy part that comes in is a binding and ownership thing. What can you share about that from your viewpoint around, multiple partners and things of that nature? How do you see it as something based on?
As if something coming out in 5D, or?
Yeah, what's your vision from it, from your view?
I haven't really given a heck of a lot of thought. Like I feel that we're just going to be with people that we resonate with, mm-hmm. and as we get to know ourselves more and on a deeper level, and have that relationship with ourselves, I personally feel that we'll probably connect maybe with a one other person. I don't know. I think relationships too, way down the road, will change, and it might not even be necessary to have that kind of experience,
Exactly.
as we'll probably just be all co-creating together anyways. I think it's going to really shift, and I don't know if we can even imagine what that's going to look like just yet, but for now, it feels to me that we'll probably gravitate towards partners that we can have that kind of open and creative partnership with, and that will be and it'll look differently than the traditional relationship that people are in these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if I refer back to the first 5,000 years after the retooling, when humanity was seeded on the planet, relationships at that point in time did not have restrictions of, ownership and control or anything like that. Two individuals may feel that they were drawn to each other, and they would, set up a kind of an experience in their life, but they were open. I'm not saying having multiple partners or anything of that nature, but they were open to be connected with others and so forth. But at the same time, that option was there. But there was not that ownership. So two people will come together because they can learn from each other, they can experience, each one has a very unique gift or whatever it is, and they get to experiment with one another. And the same thing with the kids, because a mother and father, for example, would have children, and the children wasn't exclusively owned by the parents. The parents would have a relationship and connection and so forth, but the kids were kind of raised in a community. When I mean a community, they were learning from elders and so forth. They were, somewhat cared for, because the point was, so that you understand, the kids would come fairly early in the age, and it can come at different times in the age. There wasn't this association that a child represented you or anything of that nature. It would come through you. And every time you birthed a child, there was an alteration, an upgrade that was experienced on the physical aspect of the mother, for example. And so each child was advancing from the connection of the two, genetic pools and so forth. But the parents would play a role, like breastfeeding, whatever it is, like a mother and so forth. But at some point it would be very easily interactive by others, so that the child would have multiple experiences, gain much more different viewpoints and observation points. And the reason that the elders were more focused in teaching the young was that they already had a lot of experience, while the parents were still in learning mode, aggressive learning mode, meaning having different experiences and so forth, and interacting, so that in fact that it wouldn't hold them back because there was children involved. Would they unite? Some parents would like that to be where they lived all in the same group or something of that nature. But at the same time, it was very open. Like the ownership of kids was not there, because it felt very restrictive that was the case. This all the inverted thing is like the children are yours and whatever else. And then other children would interact with the parents or whatever else, and then the parents could be together while they play and learning and so forth, and until they felt that they weren't going to be together. Women at that point in time, especially at that point in time, normally, I'm not saying it was exclusive that way, they would get impregnated, for example, with different male partners, different times, because to create more variances. So the thing is, every time a woman gets impregnated and you're going through the process of birthing a child, there would be an advancement not only with the mother, but also the child coming out would have more variances, because now it has the enhanced mother and also the donor being the father at this point in time. That may not make as much sense to a lot of you right now, but when you get to the point where your consciousness expands even further, and many of you can relate with that, because it's right, we all have it in our memory, from not only from our humanity but in the body sense. And the multidimensional soul is also understanding that from other worlds and so forth, that was kind of the case, where there was not this ownership of parents owning kids or kids and so forth. And even when they came through a family dynamics, only if it actually served and they wanted to establish a connection, it would stay in place, or else it wouldn't be a situation saying, okay, this is my family, I have to be attached to them. It wasn't the case. They would have sort of a I wouldn't say a biological, but somewhat of a biological connection. But at the same time, it was not in the same fashion as now, because the way it is now, it's been really latching attachments and reductive, in a reduction mode of what your broader experience would be. So I can give you that. So we're going back to that with much more advancement. The need of having people in your lives, as it's been programmed now, is not there, but we do relish in the experience, and that can happen without the neediness, without the dependency or anything about nature or the completion, because you're all whole. Everybody's whole. Everybody's full spectrum spirit. We may not be representing it and playing with it. We may be heavily programmed because we adopted those programs, but we're going through the deprogramming part. Was there any other questions, comments, or anything like that before I wrap her up? Because I don't know if I covered everything that people want to know about relationships, but you're the expert in the relationship world.
Yeah, I am I?
Yes.
Okay, hold on. I'm just reading a few things.
Okay.
Things just came in, so just give me a second.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. I know. I think that's mostly their comments people are making. That's all. No
Okay.
actual questions.
Okay, no questions. That's cool. All right. So overall, we go back to quickly just an overview at this point. When we're looking at massive change that we're experiencing, we're going through relationship changes. And the relationship changes that we're talking about is how we interpret it and how we connected, tethered, and attached ourselves to certain parts of our relationship experience. Like I was saying right in the beginning, our relationship with our body in its natural state is that we're connected with the body, we communicate with the body, we listen to the body, we share with the body your intent, and the body will understand and respond, but also make its own internal adjustments and utilize certain frequencies within the body itself. It will pinpoint anything that needs to be addressed and so forth. So you will see that the body has a lot to offer. So our relationship with our body, our relationship with our human entity, our relationship with our soul, those are being refined and opened up, and it's a flow. So you're communicating with all parts. Because the thing is, we have a lot of resources, but we haven't been using it. Most of our resources, or the resources that we've been using, is what the ego has projected. So here we are receiving what the ego has projected, which is all the inverted matrix. We're receiving the conditioning and programming, or what we see in the media. What we see in the external world, let's call it that, what looks like external world. We're looking at what other people are doing, how people are handling, responding. We're looking at what we're being taught, what we're seeing reflected by other people, what we have been conditioned to see and not to see, and so forth. So that's been our relationship. Kind of a dysfunctional. It was not a two-way. We were just receiving, but it was a stagnant portion of it. So we were receiving an old version, a part that was really evolving very slowly, and actually was actually accentuating polarization. So now, with this modification in our relationship, we're going into our true nature of relationship, so that we are communicating. So when we look at the world, we see the world of what is projected, but you connect with yourself and say, okay, what is the world? What's the possibility of the world? What is my possibility? The possibility may be totally different from what you're seeing. So that's why you're tapping into yourself, and you're now envisioning and feeling and experiencing within that envisioning, experiencing, feeling part what the world looks like. So as you're doing that, it's creating changes within yourself, and it's also starting to change the realities around you. Because I don't want to call it that the world is depending on you, but the world is waiting upon us, and it's working more hand in hand with us to get our feedback, our true feedback, not a reflection of the old. Because many of us have been reflecting the old, because we're taking in what we already see, we're adjusting ourselves, and we're just punching that back out or pushing it back out, and then all we're doing is reinforcing the same. So every time that we see what the world is, and then we make the modification within ourselves, we're creating a disruption of the big screen movie that we're seeing, and that the disruption is actually allowing us to plug something else different. And this is why it's so instrumental for many people to start to see their true essence and start to design from a creative aspect instead of more manifestation. Because manifestation depends on what we see in the world, internalizing, and then just with a little bit of a twist, projecting back exactly what we see. So if you're choosing to play the game better, you're learning from the game. But that's the existing game, and it's the inverted game. So there was a statement that I put out. It's either you let the world play you, or you play the world. In this case, you let the world shape you, or you shape the world, in a sense. So the thing is, now the onus is on us to shape the world, and it starts with us. Go ahead, Kimberly.
Okay, so let's see. If your twin flame is choosing polygamy, can you choose monogamy and move on with a potentially desirable partner?
Yes. If there's a preference for you to have it one way and your twin is choosing something different, then there's a respect for both parts of you to go and do what feels natural for them. There may be a unification at some point again, but the thing is, I have noticed many of the twin souls, they come together, they play a particular role, and then they kind of go their separate ways because they're still wanting to have individualized experiences. They're not ready to work together in a unified state. So you need to be okay with it. So you create, this is what I feel, and you have to look at it. You have to write out, okay, why do I want, how do you call it,
Monogamous.
monogamous?
Or it's just one-on-one.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm just trying to say the word, monogamous. A relationship, what's the story behind it? Now, your twin soul may have, a different story for their particular experience. But so you want to look at your story so that you're coming from clear, not from programs, and you're not from reacting and with an expectation of it should be one way or another. So when you're in a neutral state, then you can choose, okay, what do I prefer right now? I prefer to have only one partner. That's fine, and you can have that preference. And then if your partner, your twin, does not want to reflect that and want to have multiple partners, then you're going to keep the relationship to a certain degree in the connection wise, but they can go and do their experimenting and experiencing and so forth, and you allow another partnership to come in to match with somebody that wants to have a similar experience with you. Go ahead.
Quick question. How can we differentiate between our multidimensional selves and the selves the ego brings us?
Okay. The ego itself is always referring to the old world. It is normally story-based, meaning this or that or whatever it is. It is polarized in many ways, good, bad, right, wrong. It will utilize emotions to kind of feel good or feel bad. When it's coming from a higher perspective, it's clear. It's not polarized. It's also sharing something of an option that you may have or are capable of having. And it's very clear, but it doesn't, give you, it may say, okay, you have this option, and this option may provide this, and this option will provide that, but it's not going to say, well, if you do this, this can happen to you, and if you do this, this can happen for you. That's usually the ego, a part of it. So when somebody wants to get an answer from them, and you don't want to go why all the time and always say, well, what should I do next? Because you don't want to create a reliance to your higher self either. You want to have all parts of you involved here. So you may say, okay, listen, this is from my observation point of where I am right now and seeing what I'm seeing, and based on my stories, experience, or whatever it is, this feels the most holistic choice for me. Higher self, is this, do you have another recommendation or another viewpoint that I need to look at that would allow me to either have more clarification this direction, or maybe I should consider another direction whatsoever? Or if I have to, what do you call it, that split in the road? the divide in the road, a fork in the road, uh, at that point, then you can kind of see yourself taking the different choices and see how it feels, and you can also ask. So there's a difference between it. The ego talks a lot, creates polarity, stories left, right, and center. Just if you do that, this bad thing's going to happen, or whatever it is. Your higher self will not say that. Your higher self would say, well, if you go down this road, you're going to have some certain experiences that maybe, it may distract us or something like that, but you have the option to do so. If you go down this path, it would be more aligned where you're choosing to go. And then the ego is saying, well, no, if we go there, we're going to upset these people. If you go there, you might lose out this other person or this other thing. You won't get that from your higher self. Your higher self says this is most conducive. Everything that needs to come about will line up with that. Go ahead.
2 more quick questions, then I think we'll wrap
Wrap
it
her
up.
up? Yep.
Yeah. Can the twin flame energy jump to another person? That's one.
What do you mean by twin flame energy?
I'm going to think that you're talking about, when someone's at your twin flame, can that energy move to another person and body? That would be like a soul jump, I'm not sure.
No.
That's
well,
what they
unless
mean.
there's a soul swap of some sorts, then yes. Sometimes a twin soul may find, say, your matching soul, which is basically the same signature, same vibration frequency with different experience, may find that that particular physicality may not represent them as well. So at that point, that twin soul can either leave or take on a different body, or drop in of sort, drop into another physicality that becomes available, and then another soul can go into that one there if it's going to keep it in commission. So that can happen in that respect. As for saying the soul transferring to having a preference with somebody else, that's possible, but it's your twin soul is always your twin soul. So basically you have the same signature. Are you going to interact with each other? Possibly not, if it's not conducive for both parties, or if there's going to be parting for a period of time, that's fine too. But yeah, the only way it can transfer is that if that particular multidimensional soul decides to leave that physicality because it doesn't serve and go into another physicality.
I think you answered this question already. Will New Earth have more open relationships or monogamous Christian relationships?
Oh, it would be very open, very open. And it would be a complete choice, and not under rules, not saying, you're one with this one person for the rest of your life. It can happen. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's very natural. It's open. And when I say open, see, there's a misunderstanding what open means. Open, a lot of people see it's hopping from place to place to place. There is no consistency whatsoever. Open means that nobody's bound, everybody's free, but at the same time, you can create a heart-to-heart connection that two people want to come into each other's lives and play a role with each other for a long period of time. And sometimes it's a shorter period of time, or whatever it is, and it's that. The idea of the Christian thing at that point in time, where somebody, God's united it, and that's for life or something like that. That's that inverted thing, because it wasn't really the original design. See, the thing is, you want to be in a relationship. If you're in a relationship where the hearts are drawn to each other, rather than because you're married, not because that you live together or whatever it is, there's never, you're not going to have fear that if it goes one way or another. There's no attachments or anything of that nature. I've always seen that as the best way to be, because even from my own personal experience. I mean, I'm with Kimberly, and that's because it's not because we're connected in one way or another. It's because our hearts pull us together. Our higher aspects of ourselves are pulling together, and we're growing together, or playing together, whatever it is, and we're learning from each other. There's things I learned from her, understanding the human experience, and she learns whatever. And I mean, doesn't mean she doesn't, connect with other people. She has friends and whatever else. But, we have that, but that's a heart-to-heart choice that we're going to share a certain part of our lives together a certain way. How long is it going to last? We don't know, but at the same time, it's been 10 years almost, but at the same time, it's fluid, and there's no jealousy. There's no I need to hold on or connection. Will you miss each other if they're not together? Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, um, so that is not a stifling energy. And Kimberly can give you her side of things. When you're not owned by someone or feel that you're obligated to someone, it's open. It feels free. It feels natural, and that's the thing. Go ahead. You were going to say your part on that.
Just in general, on the relationships in general, like a lot of that stuff's not even going to matter worrying about it, because really, truly, bottom line, what matters is you accessing the true love of you and who you are. And when you're encompassing that and embodying that, then all the relationships will just automatically show up, that need to show up, that are going to complement that you're going to create with. And there's no need to worry about twin souls, twin flames, none of that, because it's not actually, I don't think it's even going to be important anymore.
No.
I think it's just that's another part. I really feel that's something else we're even coming out of, because we're moving up another level where that doesn't even need to be a part of our anything. It's just really what it comes down to is that we need to really just focus on who we are and be in love with ourselves and live from that true love. And that true love will just bring anything you need into existence to play with. And it'll be easy. There'll be no thought that'll have to go into it. It'll just happen on seemingly magically, but not really. But so it's just we don't need to complicate it. It just
Exactly, and you made a good point, because true unification of twin souls would be in non-form anyways. So in fact, the only reason, no matter what soul it could be a soulmate, it could be soul family, it can be your twin soul, or it can be just another soul that you've had experiences with, or whatever it is, or not. You're only drawn to each other because it serves. There's not any form of concrete. Like Kimberly was saying, when you get to a certain level, that doesn't even come into your reality. You don't even put any focuses this way or that way. Because right now, if it feels like, oh my God, I'm not going to have the relationship I have, or if I'm going to, it's going to be where we're not in somebody's life the way I'm used to. That's just the ego responding. That's the old inverted stuff. But when you get to a certain level, that doesn't even matter. There's not even that consideration. Like Kimberly says, the alignments will happen naturally anyways, or in her words, magically, or whatever it is, because that's the way it works. Go ahead.
That's all I have to say. I really think it's the whole relationship. Why it's the relationship effect is if when we're in that space for ourselves and we're really embodying the true essence of ourselves, it does have the ripple effect. You will have nothing but good relationships with everybody, because you'll be in such a complete understanding of who you are, and so everything will ripple out to show that's, I don't know if that's not the right word, but it'll have a ripple out effect that will mirror what you know about yourself. It will show up in your relationships.
There will be no rules, because it works very natural. There's no rules whatsoever. Is there any other questions, or are we good?
No, there is some questions, but I think we're going to end here because it's after 6, and because this is a big topic, and then maybe we'll talk about it again another day.
Okay. Are they anywhere related to what I covered, or is it going off
Well,
the fringes somewhat?
it's on the fringes, and we don't want to get into. That's why I said what I said about, if you're having issues with dealing with fear. Okay, a new partner will flirt with others because like that kind of thing. So really,
yeah, there's short answer for that. If there's a fear around, and a new partner is going to flirt with somebody else, that's the ego, and it's still part of that inverted. Because that's a program, and you have to look at the program. Why am I afraid? What does it mean to me? What is the story behind that? Because that really limits your capacity to experience it. Because as long as you have a fear, you cannot fully experience the relationship and what it provides for each other. I mean, yeah, it may push your buttons and whatever it is, but how could you appreciate and enjoy the relationship to the fullest if we're concerned about losing someone, or someone's going to flirt with somebody or anything of that nature, when that doesn't exist? Now, the other thing is, some of the roles are played out in such a fashion, I shouldn't say some, but many times those roles are played because there's a sensitivity and you want to get over it. So those kind of roles are played. The thing is, a lot of the dialogue, what if, what ifn't, what it's going to look like and everything else, that's just that's still the old software that's playing out. Anything else?
Okay, yeah. There are
Off topic? Okay.
We'll be having more shows.
Okay.
I know it's hard because everyone has questions all the time. So, but we have to cut it off sometimes.
Okay, so just collect the questions, and then we'll play with it another time. Okay, cool. Guys, fantastic. Did really good job in the game of life when it comes to relationships. Remember, you got multiple relationships. Utilizing these relationships fullest not only upgrades you and creates a powerful change in your life, but it also changes the playground, and that's the thing. It is so profound what an open relationship, which means open in the sense you share and you receive on both parties. That advances us so powerfully that it can get mind-boggling, but it's super awesome. Okay? So, till next time, go out and play. If all of these contents resonate for you, please share, comment, subscribe on whatever platform, follow whatever platform you're on. If it resonates and you would like to support us on the work that we are doing so we can continue putting more content out, then we also have either in the content, in the context, or the description below the video, a link for PayPal so you can donate. Kimberly will also put in a comment. But at the same time, if you missed the last workshop and you want to catch it, it was a very powerful workshop. And the link is in there for you to order the video and audio recordings, and all the things are in there.
In that workshop too, talking about relationships, it really was a good one to really tune into who you truly are. And really that at this time is so important for you to change everything in your life. So it is a very powerful workshop. If you weren't on it and you wanted to get the recordings, still by donation, so you donate whatever you feel you want to, but it will help anybody move through all the stuff we are going through in looking at yourself and how you can change it all.
Absolutely. Okay, guys, go out and play. Till next time, have a blast.